Okay, so I'm going to preface the video by saying I do not condone or recommend the use of anabolic steroids. This is purely my experience with the different substances, and don't take steroids, guys. I haven't taken them in years. Don't do it. But I'm going to break down today Anadrol, also known as oxymethylone, which is one of the few anabolic steroids that actually was originally used for medical use. So it was used for anemia, people with low red blood cell counts, and also to put weight on people. So some steroids like trenbolone, equipoise, also known as boldenone, those have no medical use. But things like halotestin, Anadrol, Anavar, a lot of the oral steroids actually were, made for medical usage. So they were legit. Now, I will say right off the bat that I have never been a huge fan of Anadrol. And before anyone says, well, maybe you would bunk Anadrol, I've tried roughly 8 different sources over my time when I was taking anabolic steroids and pretty much came to the same conclusion every single time. So I definitely do not think it was bunk every single time. I had good sources, but I was just never big on Anadrol. I didn't rank as highly as D-ball or Anavar as far as the strength gains. Even halotestin, I felt was better. Now, the one thing I'll say though is a lot of guys love Anadrol. So I might have been in the minority because a lot of people have really good experiences with it. I know Larry Wheels talks about how it's his favorite compound. He loves it. He uses it when he's trying to get strong for powerlifting or for strongman. A lot of strongmen are really big into Anadrol. I think you could make the case that Anadrol is the number one steroid for strongman. And the reason tren might not be is because tren affects your cardiovascular system, and you need that in a lot of strongman events where you're going to be out of breath pretty quick if you're taking a lot of trenbolone, whereas you're not going to get that with Anadrol. In fact, Anadrol will actually probably help your cardio because it's going to boost your red blood cell count and not have the negative effects that tren would. So Anadrol is huge in strongmen. That's probably the number one thing they're using high dosages of. I would speculate in strongmen they're going upwards of 300 milligrams a day, which might sound crazy, I know, but you got to understand at these very extreme levels, people are going to do some crazy stuff to win. They're going to take high amounts. So 200 to 300 milligrams a day, maybe 400. Wouldn't surprise me, guys. Wouldn't surprise me. Now, the typical dose would be 50 to 100 milligrams a day. I think 50, you're going to see less progress than you would at 100. Typically, 100 is the sweet spot with Anadrol, where you're really going to start to see pretty good strength gains, breaking that up into 50 milligrams a morning, 50 in the evening. That's how I would do it. I did try at certain points going up to 150 milligrams, but there seemed to be a major point of diminishing returns above 100 milligrams, which is the case with a lot of oral steroids. So typically with any oral steroid, more is not always better. And I would notice over 100 milligrams, I wouldn't get, that many, really any more progress. So going up to 150 from 100, I didn't notice any extra progress. But some guys do. Like I said, everybody reacts differently to these kinds of things. And I know a lot of people who love Anadrol. It's their favorite anabolic. So Anadrol gets a lot of hype. A lot of people consider it one of, if not the most potent oral. This was just never the case for me. But I almost wonder if there is something going on with people where some people metabolize certain things better through the kidneys while others metabolize it better through the liver. So this could be the case with me because I noticed that all the orals that are metabolized through the liver, I never got as good of results on, like halotestin, even D-ball to some extent, whereas Anavar being processed primarily through the kidneys, I blew up on. So that could be a thing where you might respond better to things that are more processed through the kidneys, and Anavar would be better for you. Whereas other people process things through the liver really well, and they might do better with Anadrol, halotestin, and D-ball, things like that. So it's tough to say, but that was just my experience, and it's kind of an interesting point to note. Now, Anadrol, it's going to increase your red blood cell count. Every steroid, testosterone is going to increase your red blood cell count. That's why a lot of people have to give blood on it to try to keep that down, to not get their blood too thick and have issues like that with a stroke. So red blood cell count's going to go way up on Anadrol. What I noticed with it was I would get very red. So this was the steroid that would make my skin a much more red complexion, which you see often. If you see people with that, powerlifters, especially with that very red, darker skin, you see it in with bodybuilders as well. That's Anadrol a lot of times. So definitely just looked red a lot more. There was a lot more blood flowing. That was one of the big things with the red blood cell count. Now, headaches, this has been a complaint with Anadrol. People get headaches. I didn't really get them with Anadrol. Halotestin gave me some major headaches, but Anadrol wasn't too bad for me, although that is a complaint that you're often going to hear. Now, just like any anabolic steroid, the lipids are going to take a hit. HDL, good cholesterol, is going to go down. LDL, bad cholesterol, is going to go up. And well, cholesterol isn't the end all be all anymore, as much as triglycerides are, I'd say, more important overall to keep those in range, in that 60 or so range. You definitely don't want your lipids too skewed as far as the LDL and HDL. Now, the liver toxicity, I would not put it on the level of a halotestin. I would say halotestin is more liver toxic. I would say Superdrol is more liver toxic. And I can get into this later on with those compounds in separate videos. But there definitely is quite a bit of liver toxicity still with Anadrol. I felt like it was a little more liver toxic than D-bol. So even on 300 or 600 milligrams a day of TUDCA to kind of clear out the bile in the liver and get things flowing better, and then N-acetylcysteine at 600 milligrams, I would take those. I would still feel quite a bit of liver toxicity as far as some nausea. So there's definitely liver toxicity, just not quite at the level of a halotestin or Superdrol. Like I said, dosage-wise, people often start out with 50 milligrams, upwards of 100. Those are the typical dosages, but I've heard plenty of people going 150, 200 milligrams a day, upwards of 6 weeks. So there tends to be a point of diminishing return past 6 weeks. I'd say even past 4. If you run Anadrol longer than 4 weeks, you're not going to get a ton out of it. Now, it can also lower SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, which if you lower that, you free up more free testosterone, which means you're going to get stronger. So that's a mechanism by which it works pretty well. Now, strength gains for me, underwhelming. Like I said, maybe I don't process liver-based orals as well, but it was underwhelming. For all the hype that Anadrol gets, I thought it was kind of meh. It wasn't D-bol I got stronger on. Now, the one thing I will say, though, about Anadrol is it didn't give me the bloating that D-bol had. D-bol was it was a lot more size, but it was not as clean. Anadrol was a much cleaner look to me. I have heard, though, of people bloating on Anadrol as well, which is interesting because Anadrol does not convert to estrogen. It's mainly DHT-based, although there's some kind of mechanism in which it possibly increases progesterone or prolactin, upon which you get that bloating. But I never got bloating on it. It didn't work like that for me. Like I said, D-bol, tons of bloating. Anadrol, very clean look. My muscles got harder. That was another thing. You know, they talk about that hardened look. That hardened look you'll see with halotestin a lot of times. But I really got that with Anadrol, where the muscle looked much better. It looked just like everything just was iron. So the look overall was much better. No facial bloating, just turned red. Kind of underwhelming strength gains, nothing crazy. No matter what the dosage was, I played around with it. It didn't seem to matter. So I would put Anadrol below D-bol on the strength scale, definitely below halotestin and Superdrol, and below Anavar even. But this is not the case for everybody. Like I said, a lot of people, I'm sure many people will weigh in the comments, will say that Anadrol could be the number one oral as far as strength gains. A lot of guys love it. So I'm interested to hear what your guys' experiences are. Let me know what you've thought of it in the past, if you liked it. Like I said, I've tried many different forms of it over the years, and it was always the same reaction to where I was like, I'd rather do other stuff. This just isn't cutting it for me. So I think that's a pretty good breakdown of Anadrol. Let me know if you guys like the video. Give it a comment, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and I'll keep the series going. But appreciate all the support.